We here.
What would you do if someone you trusted with your heart became the person who destroyed your life in a single, terrifying moment? On July 6, 2022, 33-year-old Tabitha Tanner made a decision that seemed ordinary, even routine. She decided to visit someone she cared about. It was a choice millions of people make every day without a second thought. But this wasn't just any visit. This was a visit that would expose lies, shatter trust, and end in an act so shocking that it would leave an entire Chicago community reeling. Within hours of walking through that apartment door, Tabitha would be dead. Not from an accident, not from natural causes, but from a deliberate act of violence so brutal that even seasoned detectives struggled to comprehend it. The man she trusted didn't just betray her. He didn't just lie to her. When confronted with his deception, when his carefully constructed double life threatened to crumble, he made a split-second decision that would haunt everyone who knew Tabitha forever. He threw her out of a fifth-floor window like she was nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded. This is the story of how trust became deadly, and how one woman's final moments would expose the monster hiding behind a familiar face. Tabitha Denise Tanner was born on December 6, 1988, in the heart of Chicago, Illinois. She was the beloved daughter of Antoinette Tanner, raised in a family where love wasn't just spoken, it was lived every single day. Those who knew Tabitha described her as a woman who carried sunshine wherever she went, someone whose presence could light up the darkest room. Growing up in Chicago's vibrant neighborhoods, Tabitha learned early that life could be challenging, but she never let those challenges dim her spirit. She was the kind of person who remembered your birthday, who showed up when you needed help moving, who listened without judgment when life got overwhelming. Her friends weren't just friends. They were family she chose, and she treated them with the same fierce loyalty she showed her blood relatives. Tabitha had dreams, ambitions, and plans for her future. She was known for her infectious laugh, her generous heart, and her unwavering belief that people were fundamentally good. She trusted easily because she lived authentically. She loved deeply because she believed others would love her the same way in return. At 33, Tabitha was building the life she wanted. She maintained close relationships with her family, especially her mother Antoinette, who was not just her parent but her confidant and best friend. Tabitha's social media was filled with moments of joy, family gatherings, celebrations with friends, and glimpses of a woman who embraced life fully. She had no idea that her trusting nature would ultimately cost her everything. Before we continue with Tabitha's story, I need you to do something for me. If you're watching this and you've ever trusted someone completely, someone you thought would never hurt you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to hear will change how you think about the people in your life forever. This isn't just another true crime story. This is a wake-up call about recognizing danger when it's wearing a familiar face. It's about understanding that the most dangerous person in your life might be someone you've shared meals with, someone you've laughed with, someone you've trusted with your secrets. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had that gut feeling that something wasn't right about someone close to you? Did you listen to that instinct, or did you ignore it? Because Tabitha's story is going to show you why that little voice in your head might be the most important thing you ever hear. Stay with me, because what happened next will shock you to your core. Tabitha Tanner's path crossed with Tyson Tillman in a way that seemed natural, almost inevitable. At 38 years old, Tyson appeared to be just another person navigating life in Chicago's complex social landscape. To Tabitha, he was someone she could connect with, someone who understood her world and seemed to genuinely care about her well-being. Their relationship wasn't simple to define. It existed in that complicated space between friendship and romance, where boundaries blur and emotions run deeper than either person might admit. Tabitha found herself drawn to Tyson in ways that felt both exciting and comfortable. He knew how to make her laugh, how to make her feel special, how to convince her that she mattered to him. What Tabitha didn't fully understand was that she had become part of something much more complex than a simple relationship. She was unknowingly caught in a carefully constructed deception that Tyson had been maintaining for months. While she believed she knew who he was, while she trusted him with her heart and her safety, Tyson was living a completely different reality. He had mastered the art of compartmentalizing his life, keeping different people in separate boxes, never allowing his various relationships to intersect. Tabitha occupied one box, completely unaware that other boxes existed, completely unaware that her trust was being weaponized against her. Tyson Tillman's history painted a disturbing picture that should have served as a massive warning sign to anyone in his orbit. Since 2003, he had been sentenced to prison 8 separate times, primarily for drug-related offenses. This wasn't a man who had made one mistake and learned from it. This was someone who had established a clear pattern of criminal behavior spanning nearly 2 decades. But Tyson had become skilled at presenting a different version of himself to the women in his life. He knew exactly what to say, how to act, and which parts of his past to hide. He understood that most people wanted to believe in second chances, in redemption stories, in the possibility that people could change. The red flags were there for anyone who looked closely enough. His inconsistent stories about where he'd been and what he'd been doing, the way he compartmentalized his relationships, never allowing different groups of people to meet. His tendency to become controlling when questioned about his activities or whereabouts. Most concerning was his reaction to confrontation. When backed into a corner, when his lies threatened to be exposed, Tyson didn't respond with honesty or remorse. Instead, he became dangerous. He had learned that violence could solve problems, that eliminating threats was easier than facing consequences. While Tabitha believed she understood her place in Tyson's life, there was another woman who thought she held that same position. This woman was not just emotionally invested in Tyson, she was carrying his child. She believed she was building a future with him, planning for their family, trusting that he was committed to their relationship. This pregnant girlfriend had no idea that Tyson was maintaining intimate connections with other women. She lived in her own carefully constructed reality, one where Tyson was faithful, honest, and devoted to their growing family. Like Tabitha, she had been fed lies that felt like love, promises that seemed genuine, and explanations that appeared reasonable. The collision of these two worlds was inevitable. When you live a double life, eventually those separate realities crash into each other with devastating force. On July 6, 2022, that collision would happen in the most tragic way possible. Neither woman knew they were about to become part of a deadly confrontation that would expose Tyson's deception and cost Tabitha her life. July 6, 2022 started like any other Wednesday for Tabitha Tanner. She had no way of knowing that the simple decision she was about to make would be her last. Something had been weighing on her mind about Tyson, questions that needed answers, conversations that couldn't wait for another day. Maybe it was intuition telling her that something wasn't right. Maybe it was the inconsistencies in his stories, finally adding up to something she couldn't ignore. Or maybe it was simply the natural desire to see someone she cared about, to spend time together, to feel that connection she believed they shared. Whatever drove her decision, Tabitha made her way to Tyson's apartment building on North Magnolia Avenue in Chicago's uptown neighborhood. The building stood 5 stories tall, filled with people living their own complicated lives, completely unaware that tragedy was about to unfold in their midst. Tabitha climbed those stairs to the 5th floor with no fear, no hesitation, no sense of impending danger. She trusted Tyson completely. She believed she was safe with him. She thought she was visiting someone who cared about her well-being, someone who would never hurt her. She knocked on that apartment door, expecting conversation, maybe explanations, possibly even reconciliation. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. When Tyson opened that apartment door and saw Tabitha standing there, his carefully constructed world began to crack. He let her inside, but something was different about his demeanor. The man who usually greeted her with warmth now seemed tense, distracted, almost agitated by her unexpected presence. Tabitha sensed the shift immediately. The apartment felt charged with an energy she couldn't quite identify. Tyson was acting strangely, checking his phone repeatedly, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone else. When she asked him what was wrong, his answers were vague, dismissive, designed to end the conversation rather than explain anything. Then came the sound that changed everything. Footsteps in the hallway, followed by a key turning in the lock. Tyson's face went pale as the door opened to reveal his pregnant girlfriend, the woman who believed she was the only woman in his life. She stepped into the apartment expecting to find her partner alone, ready to spend a quiet evening together. Instead, she found Tabitha sitting there, clearly comfortable in surroundings that should have been unfamiliar to her. The pregnant woman's confusion was immediate and obvious. Who was this woman? Why was she here? How did she know Tyson well enough to be sitting in their apartment like she belonged there? The questions came fast and angry. Tyson found himself trapped between two women who both believed they had a place in his life, both demanding explanations he couldn't give without destroying everything. What happened next defied every expectation of human decency. As the confrontation intensified, as his pregnant girlfriend demanded answers and Tabitha realized the depth of his deception, Tyson made a calculation that revealed the monster he truly was. Rather than face the consequences of his lies, rather than deal with the mess he had created, he chose violence. In a moment that lasted mere seconds, but would haunt everyone forever, Tyson grabbed Tabitha. She had no time to process what was happening, no opportunity to defend herself, no chance to escape. With shocking brutality, he forced her toward the fifth-floor window of his apartment. Tabitha's final moments were filled with terror and disbelief. The man she had trusted, the person she had cared about, was now treating her like an obstacle to be eliminated. In one horrific motion, Tyson threw her out of that window, sending her plummeting 5 stories down to the alley below. The impact was devastating. Tabitha suffered a broken shin bone, severe facial trauma, multiple abrasions, and a fatal laceration to her heart. She died alone in that alley while Tyson remained in his apartment, showing no remorse, no panic, no human emotion whatsoever. He had just murdered someone who loved him, and his only concern was covering his tracks. At 6:11 in the morning on July 7th, 2022, a passerby walking through the alley near the 4500 block of North Magnolia Avenue made a discovery that would shake them to their core. Tabitha Tanner's broken body lay motionless on the concrete, her life stolen in the most brutal way imaginable. The Chicago Police Department responded immediately to the emergency call. Officers arrived to find a scene that told a story of violence and tragedy. Tabitha's injuries were severe and unmistakable. This was not an accident, not a suicide, not a case of someone simply falling from a window. The Cook County Medical Examiner was called to the scene, and Tabitha was pronounced dead where she lay. Her body bore the devastating evidence of her final moments: the broken shin bone, the facial trauma, the abrasions covering her skin, and most heartbreaking of all, the laceration to her heart that had ended her life. Detectives immediately began treating this as a homicide investigation. The location of the body, the nature of the injuries, and the height from which she had fallen all pointed to one terrifying conclusion: someone had thrown Tabitha Tanner out of that fifth-floor window. The question was who, and the answer would prove to be more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. What investigators discovered next would chill them to the bone and provide the evidence they needed to solve Tabitha's murder. Surveillance cameras positioned around the apartment building had captured everything, creating an undeniable record of the events that unfolded that night. The footage showed Tabitha entering the building alive, walking up those stairs with no idea of the horror that awaited her. But it was what happened after her death that truly revealed the kind of monster Tyson Tillman was. The cameras captured Tyson exiting the apartment building shortly after Tabitha's body hit the ground. Instead of rushing to help her, instead of calling for emergency services, instead of showing any sign of panic or remorse, he calmly walked over to where she lay broken and dying. He stood over Tabitha's motionless form, checking to see if she was still alive. When he confirmed that his violent act had achieved its intended result, he simply turned around and walked back into the building as if nothing had happened. No phone call to 911. No attempt to get help. No display of human emotion whatsoever. For hours, Tabitha's body remained in that alley while Tyson went about his evening as normal. He had just committed murder, and his only concern was whether anyone had witnessed his crime. The surveillance footage showed a man completely devoid of conscience, someone who could take a life and feel absolutely nothing about it. This evidence would prove crucial in bringing him to justice. I will ask you something that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone kept parts of their life hidden from you? Where they had explanations for everything, but those explanations never quite added up? Comment below and tell me, What would you do if you discovered someone you trusted was living a double life? Would you confront them alone? Or would you make sure other people knew where you were going? Tabitha's story is a tragic reminder that the most dangerous moment in any deceptive relationship is when the truth threatens to come out. That's when people like Tyson become desperate, and desperate people do unthinkable things. If this story is making you think about someone in your own life, trust that instinct. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you hit that notification bell, because the next part of Tabitha's story will show you exactly how justice caught up with her killer. Chicago Police Department homicide detectives knew they were dealing with a calculated killer, and they approached Tyson Tillman's case with the thoroughness it demanded. The surveillance footage had given them their primary suspect, but they needed to build an airtight case that would ensure justice for Tabitha. Detectives began by interviewing everyone connected to the apartment building, documenting witness statements and gathering additional evidence. They meticulously examined the crime scene, photographing every detail and collecting forensic evidence that would support their case in court. The investigation revealed the complex relationship dynamics that had led to that fatal night. Detectives interviewed Tyson's pregnant girlfriend, who provided crucial testimony about the confrontation and Tyson's behavior immediately following Tabitha's death. Her account corroborated what the surveillance footage had already shown. Investigators also delved into Tyson's criminal history, discovering his 8 previous prison sentences dating back to 2003. This pattern of criminal behavior painted a picture of a man who had never learned to face consequences, who had always chosen the easy way out regardless of who got hurt. The physical evidence, witness testimony, and surveillance footage were building a case that would be impossible for Tyson to deny. But detectives were about to get something even more powerful, a confession straight from the killer's own mouth. When detectives brought Tyson Tillman in for questioning, he initially maintained his innocence with the same calculated deception he had used throughout his life. He denied any involvement in Tabitha's death, claiming he had no idea how she had ended up in that alley. His lies came easily, delivered with the confidence of someone who had talked his way out of trouble many times before. But this time was different. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and detectives weren't buying his fabricated story. As the interrogation continued, Tyson's composure began to crack under the weight of undeniable facts. Then came the moment that would seal his fate forever. During a break in questioning, while wearing a body camera that was still recording, Tyson made a phone call. What he said during that call would eliminate any possibility of claiming innocence. The body camera captured Tyson's own words as he admitted to the crime. "I threw the expletive out the window." Those 7 words contained a full confession to murder, spoken by the killer himself, with shocking casualness. He had just confessed to throwing a human being out of a 5th-floor window like she was garbage to be discarded. There was no remorse in his voice, no recognition of the life he had destroyed, just cold acknowledgement of what he had done. Armed with surveillance footage, witness testimony, and Tyson's own recorded confession, prosecutors moved swiftly to ensure he would face the full consequences of his actions. Tyson Tillman was formally arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the death of Tabitha Tanner. During his initial court appearance, the judge made a decision that reflected the severity of his crime and the danger he posed to society. Tyson was ordered held without bail, with the court citing both his extensive criminal history and the brutal nature of Tabitha's murder. The legal system that had failed to reform Tyson through his 8 previous prison sentences now faced the task of ensuring he would never have the opportunity to hurt another innocent person. His pattern of criminal behavior, spanning nearly 2 decades, had finally culminated in the ultimate crime. As the case moved through the courts, Tabitha's family and friends waited for the justice she deserved. The evidence against Tyson was overwhelming, his confession undeniable, and the community's demand for accountability absolute. The news of Tabitha Tanner's brutal murder sent shockwaves through her Chicago community and devastated everyone who knew and loved her. Her mother, Antoinette Tanner, lost not just her daughter but her best friend, confidant, and the light of her life. The woman who had raised Tabitha to be trusting and loving now had to grapple with the reality that those very qualities had made her vulnerable to a monster. Friends and family members gathered in the alley where Tabitha's body was found, creating a memorial that reflected the love she had brought into their lives. They lit candles, released balloons, and shared memories of a woman whose generosity and warmth had touched countless people. The contrast between their beautiful tributes and the ugly circumstances of her death was heartbreaking. Social media became flooded with photos and memories of Tabitha. Images of family gatherings, celebrations, moments of pure joy that now felt impossibly precious. Her community struggled to understand how someone so full of life, someone who brought happiness to others, could have her future stolen by someone she trusted. The grief was compounded by anger and a desperate need for answers. How could this have been prevented? What signs were missed? How many other women were in danger from men like Tyson Tillman? Looking back at Tyson Tillman's behavior, the red flags were there, glaring warning signs that could have saved Tabitha's life if they had been recognized and acted upon. Understanding these patterns is crucial for protecting yourself and others from similar predators. First, Tyson's extensive criminal history, spanning nearly 2 decades, should have been a massive warning. 8 prison sentences since 2003 revealed a man who consistently chose criminal behavior over lawful living. This wasn't someone who had made mistakes and learned from them. This was someone with a fundamental disregard for rules, consequences, and other people's well-being. Second, his compartmentalized lifestyle was a classic manipulation tactic. He kept different relationships completely separate, never allowing his various romantic interests to meet or even know about each other. This isolation prevented anyone from getting a complete picture of who he really was or what he was doing. Third, his controlling behavior and violent reactions to confrontation were deadly warning signs. When backed into a corner, when his lies threatened exposure, Tyson didn't respond with honesty or accountability. Instead, he became dangerous, viewing violence as an acceptable solution to his problems. Most importantly, his complete lack of empathy and remorse revealed his true nature. After throwing Tabitha to her death, he showed no panic, no guilt, no human emotion. He calmly checked her body and walked away as if he had simply disposed of trash. These weren't subtle hints. They were screaming alarms that went unheeded. Tabitha's tragic death teaches us critical lessons about protecting ourselves and our loved ones from dangerous individuals. These strategies could save your life or the life of someone you care about. First, always tell someone where you're going when visiting someone, especially if you're having relationship problems or confronting someone about their behavior. Create a safety plan with a trusted friend or family member who expects to hear from you by a specific time. Second, trust your instincts when something feels wrong. If someone's stories don't add up, if they're secretive about parts of their life, if they react with anger when questioned, these are serious red flags that deserve your attention, not your excuses. Third, research the people you're involved with romantically. Criminal background checks are easily accessible, and knowing someone's history can reveal patterns of dangerous behavior. Don't let charm and manipulation blind you to documented evidence of violence or criminal activity. Fourth, never confront a potentially dangerous person alone, especially in their territory. If you must have difficult conversations, do it in public places with other people around, or bring a trusted friend for support and safety. Finally, if you recognize these warning signs in someone you know, speak up. Don't stay silent because it's uncomfortable. Your voice could prevent another tragedy like Tabitha's. Tabitha Denise Tanner's life was cut tragically short, but her story continues to resonate with people around the world who refuse to let her death be meaningless. Her legacy isn't defined by how she died. It's defined by how she lived and how her story now serves as a powerful warning that could save countless other lives. Every time someone shares Tabitha's story, every time someone recognizes the warning signs we've discussed today, every time someone chooses safety over politeness when confronting dangerous behavior, Tabitha's memory lives on. Her trusting nature, her generous heart, and her belief in the goodness of people weren't weaknesses. They were beautiful qualities that made her who she was. But her story also teaches us that we can honor those qualities while still protecting ourselves. We can be loving and trusting while also being smart and cautious. We can give people chances while also paying attention to their actions, not just their words. Tabitha's mother, Antoinette, and her entire family have had to endure unimaginable pain, but they've also seen how Tabitha's story has opened eyes and potentially prevented other tragedies. That knowledge doesn't ease their grief, but it gives meaning to their loss and ensures that Tabitha's life continues to matter long after her death. If Tabitha's story has affected you the way it's affected me, I need you to take action right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this one are exactly why this channel exists. We're not just here for entertainment. We're here to educate, to warn, and to potentially save lives. Share this video with every woman in your life. Share it with your daughters, your sisters, your friends, your co-workers. Share it with anyone who needs to understand that trusting someone doesn't mean ignoring red flags, and that love should never require you to compromise your safety. Comment below and tell me, what warning sign from Tabitha's story resonated most with you? What will you do differently after hearing her story? Your comments create a community of people looking out for each other, and that community could be the difference between life and death for someone watching.